My name's Andrea Higgins. I'm 31, and if you told me a year ago that I'd be starting over from scratch, no job, no boyfriend, no plan, I would have laughed. Back then, my life looked picture perfect from the outside. A nice apartment downtown, a stable job in tech sales, a boyfriend everyone said was charming and ambitious. His name was Randy. We'd been together 3 years. I thought we were a team. He worked in marketing, creative, spontaneous, the kind of guy who could light up a dinner party with one story. I was the grounded one, the steady paycheck, the planner, the believer in long-term goals. I used to think our differences balanced each other. Now I know they only hid the cracks. Randy loved the idea of success, the look of it, the kind of man who followed influencer couples and called them inspirational. At first I thought it was harmless. We'd sit on the couch scrolling through travel vlogs while he'd joke, "That'll be us one day, babe." But slowly the jokes turned into expectations. He'd point out designer bags or cars and say, "You'd look amazing in that if we could afford it." The if always hung in the air. Still, I loved him. Enough to cover rent when his freelance gigs dried up. Enough to cook dinner after 12-hour shifts while he networked online. Enough to believe him when he said we'd build something together. Then the storm hit. It was early 2025. My company downsized. Whole departments gone overnight. I'd been there 5 years, built client relationships from scratch, and just like that, laid off. No severance. Just a polite email and a final paycheck. I remember walking home that night, clutching the box of my desk stuff photos, a mug, a stress ball, thinking, he'll understand. He knows how much I've given. When I walked through the door, Randy was scrolling on his phone. I forced a smile. "Hey, so, they cut half the sales team. I'm out. But it's temporary. I've got contacts. I'll bounce back." He didn't even look up right away. "You're kidding." "No, but it's fine. I already sent a few messages to you." He stood, tossed his phone on the couch, and frowned like my bad news had ruined his day. "Andrea, how are we supposed to live? You can't just lose your job and expect everything to stay the same." "I don't expect that. I just need a little time. You've had gaps before. Remember, I supported you." He scoffed. "That's different. I had potential. People wanted to work with me." "You're in sales if you're not selling, you're nothing." His words stung, but I stayed calm. "Randy, I've been paying most of our bills for months. You're acting like I'm dragging you down." He turned away, muttering, "Maybe you are." That night I cooked dinner anyway. Pasta with his favorite sauce. He didn't touch it, just stayed on his phone, texting. Days passed. I sent out resumes, took calls, tried to stay positive, but Randy's mood got colder. The way he looked at me changed, like I was an inconvenience, not a partner. One evening I came home from a long interview. My heels ached, my voice was raw from rehearsing pitches. Randy was sitting on the couch scrolling again. His phone screen lit up with a notification, Sabrina. I froze for a second. I'd heard the name before, some collaborator from a brand event. I didn't say anything, but I didn't have to. He looked up with that practiced sigh of guilt. "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. "About what?" "About us. I can't do this anymore. You've changed since you lost your job." "It's been 3 weeks," I said quietly. "I'm trying to rebuild." "Yeah, but it's not just that." He looked me up and down, his voice icy. "You smell like failure, Andrea. Like stress and takeout and desperation." For a second, I thought I misheard. Who says that to someone they love? "I'm sorry, what?" "Look, I need someone who pushes me forward, not drags me into their problems. Sabrina gets that. She's building something exciting, not just surviving." He said it so casually, like he was talking about upgrading a phone. I just stood there numb. No yelling, no begging, just silence. "If that's how you see me," I finally said, "then I guess I've already outgrown you." I packed my bag, laptop, clothes, a single frame photo I couldn't yet throw away. Randy didn't move, didn't even ask me to stay. As I opened the door, he muttered almost proudly, "You'll come crawling back when you realize no one wants a broke girl." I turned to him, my voice steady. "No one worth loving would ever say that." Then I left. Rain had started to fall outside, light but cold. It hit my cheeks like tiny slaps, washing away the warmth of that apartment of us. Each step away from him hurt, but it also felt like breathing after holding my breath for too long. That was the last night I ever heard his voice, at least for a while. The morning after I left Randy's apartment, I sat in my car for nearly an hour, engine off, just staring at the foggy windshield. My suitcase was in the passenger seat, my resume folder on top of it. My whole life fit into that tiny space. It's strange how quiet the world feels when the noise of someone's judgment finally stops. I checked my phone, nothing. No, come back, no, I'm sorry, not even a goodbye, just silence. That silence became my companion for the next few weeks. I rented a tiny studio on the edge of the city, thin walls, flickering light, and a view of the neighboring laundry line. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I'd lost count of the nights I cried on that worn-out mattress, replaying Randy's words in my head. You smell like failure. At first, I thought he'd cool off, realize what he'd said, maybe reach out. But days turned into weeks, and instead of an apology, I saw his new chapter unfold online. Photos of Randy and Sabrina, perfect lighting. Champagne glasses, captions about new beginnings. The same phrases he once used with me. My chest burned when I saw it, not just from jealousy, but from disbelief. The same man who once said he couldn't afford dinner was now posting pictures at rooftop bars. I stared at those pictures long enough to memorize the fake smiles. It was cinematic if you were into horror. I deleted my social media accounts that night. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much. Every scroll felt like reopening a wound. Without the distraction, reality hit harder. Bills, job rejections, loneliness. One afternoon, I found myself standing in front of a mirror I'd brought from our old apartment. It was cracked from the move. I whispered to my reflection, "You're not broken, you're just editing." That became my mantra. I filled my days with job applications and freelance gigs, anything to stay afloat. Some days I'd deliver packages or edit marketing copy late into the night. On others, I'd stare at my inbox, wondering if I'd made a mistake by walking away. But deep down, I knew even if I went back, I'd never respect myself again. Still, he haunted me, his voice, his scent, his arrogance. Then came the final blow. A mutual friend, Jake, called one evening. "Hey, Andrea, I know you don't want to hear this, but Randy and Sabrina are engaged. Just thought you should know before you see it online." I didn't cry. Not that night. I just laughed. A dry, exhausted sound that didn't even feel like mine. Engaged already, good for them. But after I hung up, I sat on the floor, hugging my knees, whispering to the quiet room, "She doesn't know what she's getting." That was the last time I allowed myself to cry over him. The next morning, I packed away everything that reminded me of us. His hoodie, his mug, the photo from our last vacation. I placed them all in a small box, sealed it with tape, and wrote one word on top: done. I dropped it off at a donation center. The volunteer didn't even ask what was inside, just smiled and said, "Starting fresh." I nodded. Trying to. That night, I poured myself a glass of cheap red wine and watched the city lights flicker outside my window. Somewhere Randy was probably toasting with champagne. But I realized something important. I didn't envy his life anymore. I pitied it. Because people like him don't really change. They just find new stages to perform on. And while he was busy performing, I was learning how to live without an audience. The next morning, I wrote 3 words on a sticky note and placed it on my wall: no more crumbs. No more settling for less than love. No more waiting for someone to value me. No more believing that success comes from who stands beside me. It comes from who I become. As I drifted off to sleep that night, a quiet peace settled in. For the first time in months, I wasn't replaying what he said. I was imagining what I'd say to him if he ever came back. And the words were simple: too late. The silence that used to feel like punishment slowly became my peace. 2 months after the breakup, I'd adjusted to my small studio. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. The kind of place where you could hear your neighbor's TV through the wall, but also hear your own thoughts for the first time in years. My routine became my lifeline. Mornings started early, black coffee, a jog around the cracked sidewalks. Job boards open by 8 a.m. At first, the rejections hurt. Each we've decided to move forward with another candidate chipped away at my confidence. But little by little, I stopped taking them personally. I began treating every no as redirection, not rejection. When I wasn't job hunting, I took free online courses in digital marketing and coding skills I'd once helped Randy brag about. Funny how the things I used to do to support his dreams were now the tools rebuilding mine. There were bad days too. Some mornings I couldn't even get out of bed. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling fan thinking about how one sentence, "You smell like failure," could unravel years of trust. On those days, I forced myself to move. I'd open my laptop, put on soft music, and type random thoughts just to remind myself I still had a voice. Eventually, those thoughts turned into journal entries, therapy sessions, on paper. Then one day I made it real. I walked into a community mental health clinic, nervous but determined. The therapist, a calm woman with kind eyes, asked, "What made you decide to come today?" I smiled weakly. Because I got tired of pretending I was fine. That first session hurt. I had to say things out loud. I'd been avoiding the humiliation, the loneliness, the quiet shame of being discarded. But she said something that stuck with me. Healing isn't about getting even, Andrea. It's about getting real. You can't rebuild while still living in someone else's story. That sentence hit me harder than Randy's insult ever did. So I started writing a new story, my own. I got a part-time remote consulting gig for a small company. It didn't pay much, but it was enough to stop counting every dollar. Every payday felt like a tiny victory. To celebrate my first invoice, I bought myself flowers, cheap supermarket daisies, but I arranged them like a bouquet. For the first time in forever, I smiled just for me. And slowly the ache faded. Sometimes I'd hear Randy's name floating through mutual friends' conversations, mostly in passing. I pretended not to care, but deep down curiosity flickered. I told myself not to check, but one sleepless night I did. His social media was exactly what I expected. Expensive dinners, rooftop photos, Sabrina on his arm, all filtered perfection. But beneath the gloss, something felt off. The captions tried too hard. The smiles strained. A comment here and there. Didn't that company fold? Where's the product launch? I scrolled through the comments until guilt forced me to stop. I closed the app and whispered, "Not your circus anymore." Still, I couldn't shake a strange feeling like a quiet shift in the air. The next morning, I got an unexpected email from Jake, our old mutual friend. "Hey, Andrea, just checking in. You seem to be doing great. By the way, have you heard what's going on with Randy's new business?" My heart skipped. I didn't respond. Not yet. But that one question lingered all day. What was going on with Randy? I didn't know it then, but the karma I thought I'd let go of was already on its way. And for once, I didn't have to do anything but keep living. It started as whispers, little fragments of gossip that slipped into my inbox or surfaced in mutual chats. At first, I ignored them. I was busy between freelancing gigs, therapy, and rebuilding my confidence. I didn't have time for the ghost of a man who once told me I smelled like failure. But the whispers grew louder. One message from Jake read, "You won't believe this Randy's startup is getting called out online. Something about fake investors and unpaid partners." I almost didn't click the link he sent. Curiosity won. There it was, an exposé thread with screenshots and angry comments. Randy's company, the one he'd bragged about to everyone, was a hollow front. He and Sabrina had been promising high-yield collaborations through an influencer platform that didn't even exist. The comments were brutal scam fraud, avoid these two at all costs. My heart didn't race, it slowed, because this wasn't schadenfreude, it was confirmation. He hadn't outgrown me. He'd just found a new stage to fail on. I closed the tab, stared at my reflection in the laptop screen and whispered, "You built your empire on lies, Randy, and it's finally cracking." Over the next few weeks, the story unfolded like poetic justice. First came the legal threats, small-time investors demanding refunds, a lawsuit from a local brand they'd duped. Then the partnership posts vanished. Sabrina's social media turned quiet, her captions replaced by vague mental health break statements. Eventually, the photos of Randy and Sabrina disappeared entirely. But the internet never forgets. Someone leaked screenshots of Randy's texts, angry, controlling, condescending. It was eerie reading his words to her, echoes of how he once spoke to me. "You're embarrassing me. Do better next time. I can't be around failure." The same poison just poured into a new cup. One night, while washing dishes, I caught myself thinking about Sabrina. I wanted to hate her, but I didn't. She was just another person who'd fallen for the same charm I once mistook for ambition. People like Randy didn't love, they consumed. Weeks passed and the gossip subsided, but not before one final update reached me. Jake sent another message. "He's gone, Andrea. Moved out of the condo. Word is he's broke. Sabrina kicked him out after finding out he'd used her credit to pay off his debts." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "I hope he finds peace, far away from me." And I meant it. That evening, I went for a walk through the city park, earbuds in hands tucked into my coat pockets. The air was cool, crisp, the kind of night that smells like rain and renewal. A couple passed by laughing, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel that familiar pang of envy. I just felt free. I sat on a bench overlooking the fountain, the city lights shimmering on the water, and took a deep breath. He once said I smelled like failure, but failure has its own scent, one he'll never recognize. It smells like rain on new soil, like resilience after heartbreak, like freedom. I smiled to myself, realizing I didn't need revenge. Life had already taken care of that for me. By the time winter rolled around, Randy had become nothing more than a ghost story, I told myself, when I needed proof that walking away had been the right choice. My life wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. I'd landed a full-time consulting contract with a small but growing firm. My days were full, my nights quiet. I'd even started sleeping through them again. Then one Thursday morning, while I was making coffee, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Unknown. Hey, it's Randy. Can we talk? I froze the mug halfway to my lips. 6 months of silence, and he appears like nothing happened. I didn't reply. I blocked the number. A week later, a new number popped up. Unknown. Andrea, please don't ignore me. I made a mistake. I need to explain. Delete. Another week, another number. Unknown. Mark ruined everything. I should have never left you. You were the only one who truly cared. I frowned. Mark. Then I remembered Sabrina's real name for her ex was Marcus, the shady business partner Randy had once mentioned. So the empire that imploded wasn't just his, he'd been dragged down with someone worse. Still, I stayed silent, but silence didn't stop him. Voicemails followed. His voice was slower now, heavier. I listened to one out of morbid curiosity. Andrea, I know I said awful things. I didn't mean them. I was under pressure. Sabrina. She turned out to be controlling, jealous. She used me. Please, can we start over? I've changed. He always said that when he wanted something, I've changed. I deleted the voicemail and kept living. But a few nights later, someone knocked on my door. 3 sharp knocks, the kind that make your stomach drop before your mind catches up. When I peeked through the peephole, I almost didn't recognize him. Randy, hair disheveled, eyes tired, shoulders slumped under a worn jacket. Gone was the polished man with expensive watches and smug smiles. This version looked defeated. I opened the door just enough to speak. What do you want, Randy? He tried to smile, but his lips trembled. To talk, please, just 5 minutes. I crossed my arms. You had 3 years. You used them to humiliate me. I was stupid, he said softly. Sabrina destroyed everything. She stole money from the company, left me with debt. I lost everything, Andrea. My friends, my home, my reputation. But you... I'm not your safety net, I cut in. You didn't lose me, Randy. You threw me away. He swallowed hard, eyes glassy. I didn't mean that failure comment. You have to believe me. I don't, I said, because I don't need to. He looked at me like he didn't recognize the person standing before him. You were always the calm one, he murmured. Now you sound cold. No, I said steady. I sound done. I started to close the door, but he stepped forward, desperation flaring. Andrea, please. I've hit rock bottom. I need someone who believes in me again. For a second, I almost pitied him until I remembered standing in our old apartment holding my pink slip while he told me I smelled like failure. That pity vanished. You're looking for forgiveness, I said quietly. But what you really want is comfort. And that's not my job anymore. He blinked, stunned. So that's it. That's it. I shut the door. He knocked again once, twice, then silence. I slid down against the door, exhaling the kind of breath that felt like years leaving my chest. Later that night, I checked my email. There it was, one last attempt. Subject. You're the only person who ever saw the real me. Message. Please don't give up on us. I can be better. I didn't reply. I archived it. Then I blocked every new address that came after. And when he started using mutual friends to reach me, messages like, be the bigger person, Andrea, he's suffering, I muted them all. Suffering is the price of realizing too late that decency can't be replaced. The truth was, I didn't hate him. I just no longer needed him. And that, I realized, was what freedom actually felt like. By the time spring came around, I had everything. I once begged life for stability, peace, and a version of happiness that didn't depend on anyone's approval. I'd been promoted to a senior consultant role at my firm. My clients respected me. My paycheck finally reflected the effort I'd been pouring into my work for years. I'd even started dating again, nothing rushed, just someone kind. His name was Liam, a quiet, grounded architect with the same calm energy I used to give to people who never appreciated it. For the first time in forever, I wasn't surviving. I was living. Then came the night of Jake's engagement party. He'd been one of the few friends who stayed neutral after the breakup, never gossiping, never taking sides. When his invitation arrived, handwritten and warm, I knew I wanted to go. The venue was elegant, all soft lighting, clinking glasses, and live jazz that made conversations hum in rhythm. Liam held my hand as we entered. I wore a dark emerald dress, simple but elegant, and for the first time I didn't feel the need to prove anything. People greeted me warmly. Some even said, Andrea, you look incredible. I heard about your promotion, congrats. Compliments felt different now. They didn't feed my ego. They affirmed my peace. Halfway through the evening, I was laughing with a small group near the bar when the air changed, that strange static of recognition. Someone whispered my name softly, Andrea. I turned and there he was. Randy. I didn't recognize him at first. The crisp, confident man I once loved was gone. His suit was slightly rumpled hair, unkempt smile, hollow. He looked older, not in years, but in spirit. He forced a smile. Wow, you look amazing. It's been a while. I smiled politely. It has. How have you been? He hesitated. His eyes darted toward Liam, who extended a polite nod before excusing himself to grab drinks. Randy stepped closer, lowering his voice. Can we talk just for a minute, please? I hesitated, then followed him a few steps aside, far enough to avoid a scene, close enough to keep it short. He took a breath. Seeing you here, it hit me how much I ruined. Andrea, I'm sorry. For everything. The way I treated you, the things I said I was stupid. I thought success meant having more, but I didn't realize I already had what mattered. I studied him. His eyes were glassy, a mix of regret and desperation. You told me I smelled like failure, I said softly. He winced, looking away. I know, I was an idiot. I didn't mean it. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. Then why are you here, Randy? He hesitated, then exhaled. Because I'm lost. Everything's gone. The company, the money, Sabrina, all of it. I see you now thriving, and I can't stop thinking that maybe there's still a chance. I laughed not cruelly, but genuinely because it was absurd. A chance for what? For you to ruin me again. His jaw tensed. No, I've changed. You've adapted, I corrected. Changing means you understand what you did. Adapting means you just found a new mask. His face fell. You really don't believe people can change. I do, I said, but not for the same reasons that broke them. For a long moment we stood there in silence. The music played softly in the background, the sound of a life he no longer belonged to. Finally he whispered, You've become cold, Andrea. I smiled faintly. No, Randy, I've become whole. He swallowed hard. So that's it? That's it? He nodded slowly, realizing the conversation was over. I really did love you, he said, almost pleading. Then you should have treated me like it, I replied. And with that, I turned and walked back toward Liam, who greeted me with a calm smile and a glass of champagne. As we toasted to Jake's happiness, I caught a glimpse of Randy standing alone at the edge of the crowd, his reflection fractured in the ballroom mirrors. He'd once said I smelled like failure. Now all I could smell on him was desperation, and it didn't suit him. The next morning, sunlight poured through my apartment window, soft, golden, warm. The kind of light that doesn't ask for attention, it just exists. Peaceful, quiet. I stood barefoot in my kitchen, sipping coffee, still replaying last night in my mind. The look on Randy's face when I walked away. The silence that followed. The way it didn't hurt anymore. For so long I thought closure meant hearing I'm sorry, but now I understood real closure comes when you stop needing it. Randy was gone. Not just from my life, but from the part of my mind that used to ache for his approval. I walked over to my balcony, the same spot where I'd once cried, into takeout containers, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. The same view that used to look small now felt infinite. Below the city buzzed morning traffic laughter, life moving forward, mine included. I smiled, watching the light catch on the leaves of my little potted plant, a gift from Liam. It had almost died once when I forgot to water it during my low days. Now it was thriving. Resilient. Kind of like me. I thought about everything that had happened in the past year. The humiliation, the heartbreak, the rebuilding. The woman who once let someone define her worth had become someone who didn't need validation to feel valuable. And the irony wasn't lost on me. He said I smelled like failure, but failure turned out to be the best perfume I ever wore. Because failure meant I tried. It meant I cared. It meant I risked loving someone who didn't deserve it and came out stronger anyway. Failure taught me where my boundaries are. It taught me that love without respect is just a beautiful cage. And most importantly, it taught me that walking away isn't weakness. It's freedom with a heartbeat. I grabbed my phone and typed a short message to my therapist. Thank you. I finally get it. She replied with a single heart emoji. I smiled, set the phone down, and opened my laptop to start work. A new client had reached out that morning, another small business that wanted to grow online. Funny, I used to help people chase image. Now I help them build something real. As I typed, the world outside glowed brighter. I leaned back in my chair, breathing in the smell of coffee rain and new beginnings. Freedom doesn't have a price tag. It doesn't sparkle like gold or scream for attention. It smells like quiet mornings, like clean sheets and laughter you don't have to fake, like forgiveness not for others, but for yourself. I once built my life around someone who thought success was about money and status. Now I build mine around peace. And peace, I've learned, has its own scent. The scent of freedom.